Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, we'll be continuing the updates on the Ukrainian offensive. And today there may be a change of pace because from the latest updates from Deep State Map, they've added a few gray zones in the areas of attack the Ukrainian forces have started. First off, in the west, there's the Lobkova area, which has been turned into a gray zone according to Deep State Map. And then here to the east by Velika Novosilka, the Ukrainians have advanced and the Neskushne and Blahodatne villages are now also within a gray zone. And then finally the village of Levatne is also in a gray zone according to Deep State Map. So this indicates that the Ukrainians may have had some success as they are able to advance and turn these areas into gray zones. However, there's not a lot of videos coming from these areas since the videos from Novodonetsk, which showed a destruction of Ukrainian vehicles. However, we're seeing from these areas, only video that is available from Deep State Map is one in Lobkova, where there is this soldier here. He has a blue armband, which indicates that he is a volunteer, not a standard Ukrainian soldier. So either a foreign person who has been invited to Ukraine or a Ukrainian who has volunteered. Either case, these soldiers seem to be doing some sort of clearance operation as we see them going into some underground facilities, and we hardly see anything worth calling combat as there is a little bit of firefights, but there doesn't seem to be anyone. So generally, this is a clearing operation, which indicates that Lobkova fell under Ukrainian control. However, according to the latest news, it seems that did indeed happen, and Lobkova was under Ukrainian control, but then the Russians recaptured it, which is why I believe Deep State has put it as a gray zone rather than Ukrainian control, because the latest news isn't exactly very clear as to who controls it, as there has been soon some doubt into the control of the village. As for the other areas, there's no clear evidence as to who controls any of these areas. However, according to Russian sources, Neskushne and Blahodatne are still under Russian control, as well as Levatne. And according to Ukrainian sources, they may have advanced in these areas. So it's not very clear in these areas. However, if the Ukrainians have managed to capture these villages, then that shows that the situation is starting to change, as the Ukrainians are seeing some success now compared to before, where they had barely advanced anything. They had managed to capture Novodonetsk, but then the Russians managed to recapture it, and even here on the Deep State Map, it is under Russian control. So the areas the Ukrainians managed to capture in the first round, they all were recaptured by the Russian forces, but now we may see that the Ukrainians are capturing multiple areas, which could indicate a weakening point of contact on the Russian side, which would allow the Ukrainians to start advancing in these areas, these parts of the front line, mainly here by Velika Novosilka, but also by Orehiv. So that seems to be the current situation. Some further gray zones here by the front line, but no clear advances. Then we also have this video from militaryland.net that shows a M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle fighting in the Zaporizhzhia front. So this is most likely from the footage where the Russian forces destroyed multiple Bradleys as well as a Leopard 2A6 tank. In this area, we see that the Russian forces have a lot of artillery prepared, as well as this is the most fortified area of the front line, which could indicate why, despite the Ukrainians sending their best equipment, they're having a hard time breaking through. However, something that seems to be very clear so far in this offensive is that although the Ukrainians are losing a lot of equipment, they seem to be able to extract most of their soldiers without losing them, which is very significant because equipment can be replaced, but the training that soldiers have undergone takes way too much time and effort to replace. So although it seems that the Ukrainians have failed to gain any major success so far in this almost a week of fighting, they at the very least are limiting their own casualties, which would allow them to continue this offensive for much longer than if they were actually taking these casualties. Then we have this video which shows, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it is said to be at the Zaporizhzhia front, but a Russian Lancet drone actually hit a Leopard 2. This is another Leopard 2A6. However, something very interesting is that it seems to be abandoned as there is no movement from the tank itself, and there's no reaction to it being hit. The only thing is that it is most likely abandoned, and the Russians, unable to capture the vehicle, decided to destroy it to prevent the Ukrainians from recovering it and repairing it to be used again. Then we have this picture here of previous assumed Leopard tank. However, according to Red Effect, this is a Ukrainian T-64 tank, so it is not a Leopard, it is a T-64, which is significantly different. Then we have this footage here. I blurred it out because when there's an actual fighting, an actual shooting, then it's very difficult to actually include it in my videos without getting demonetized. So we can see from this video that there are some Ukrainian soldiers as well as armored vehicles. These are Humvees, American Humvees, and they are storming Russian positions by launching these Humvees to the front, close to the trenches, and then the soldiers demount the Humvees and then storm it, as well as the Humvees providing cover as well as cover fire, so that the Russian soldiers are suppressed while the Ukrainian soldiers can advance to the Russian positions and overtake them by closing in on them. At the same time, we see that the Ukrainian forces have artillery support included in this fighting, which shows that although in some cases the Russians have the upper hand, this specific case we're seeing that the Ukrainians have the upper hand. So it's still too early to determine whether or not the Ukrainians are the ones with the upper hand in this battle, or if it is the Russians, as although the Russians have been able to completely withstand the Ukrainian offensive so far, the Ukrainians have not used all of their power, they just used a small margin of it, which means that they still have a lot extra that they are able to use. So the offensive is not determined yet. We're still in the initial stages. We're still in the first stage, and we're entering into the second stage now that the Ukrainians have started probing these frontline positions. They should by now have achieved a clearer picture as to where the Russians are strong and where they are weak, so that they are able to expand their zone of control and attack the proper places, which will allow the Ukrainians to get a breakthrough on the Russian defenses. So what is the next phase of the offensive? So what we have seen so far is that the Ukrainian forces attack across the front line, trying to identify the weak positions of the Russian forces. They've now been doing this for 5 to 6 days, which means that by now they should have a clear picture of where the Russians are strong and where they are weak, based on the probing attacks that they've been doing, to see exactly that. So with the information they should have gathered by now, they should be able to determine where they need to attack and where they need to just hold the line and prevent a Russian counterattack. So if the Russians are weak in a specific place, then we will see the Ukrainians take reserves from these other areas towards that position. If we imagine it being at Huliaipole, then we will see a lot of Ukrainian support going to Huliaipole before making a major push in that direction. So we may be closing in on this second phase depending on how much information the Ukrainians have managed to receive so far. And if they are ready to do so, then we'll see a major push in that direction. So we'll have to see what happens in the next coming days. But other than that, most likely that is what is going to happen. And that is all for this update. Thank you for watching and have a great day.